Hello and welcome to another interview in the Time for Advice Digital Transformation video series. Over the course of this series, we'll be interviewing industry figures to see what they understand by digital transformation and how they see it impacting financial advice and wealth management businesses. Our guests will include industry pundits and practitioners. All will have their own views, and we hope that you'll find them interesting and informative. Now, as a provider of technology solutions to financial advisors, we've no doubt about the value digital transformation can deliver a business, not only in increased profits, but also in long-term sustainability. Too few people have access to professional advice, simply because the current model is overly expensive due to disconnected systems and multiple manual workarounds, which diverts time away from client relationship management onto mundane tasks like review report writing, for example, that clients simply don't value. At Time for Advice, we want to change all that. We're already hearing from clients that are well on the way to digitally transforming their businesses. For example, one of our clients recently announced that his firm is servicing over 2,000 clients per advisor. That's 10 times the average. It's important to remember that digital transformation is a journey, and all firms will be at different stages of that journey. Some well advanced, others just starting. There's no doubt that it's challenging, but we believe firms need to think big, start small, but just start. Today, I'm happy to welcome Sam Seaton, CEO of Moneyhub, to share her views about digital transformation and what she believes it means for the industry. Sam, welcome. Now, I'm just going to throw something at you. It's a bit of a curved ball, and it's a date, 23rd of December 2017. So Sam, you were the first person to do a Who's in the Front Seats interview, and I might edit a little bit of a clip into this interview just to sort of explain to our viewers what the hell I'm talking about. You were very brave.
I was brave, actually. Yeah. Yes, I think I was brave.
You were very brave, and I think we had a really good time. I did, certainly. But
I did enjoy it.
Just about, maybe. But you were brave. But welcome, and it's so lovely to see you, Sam. It's fantastic. So Sam, a CEO of Moneyhub, obviously you've had a bit of a journey to get here. So tell us about your background and how you've ended up where you are today.
Well, how far back do I go? Because it's an odd background. You know, I have had quite a journey to here. I bought 2 horses with me from Australia, so I didn't arrive here with, you know, financial services in my sights. The horses brought me to the UK, and I had a lovely time being a professional event rider to start with.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
so that's what brought me to this country. So thoroughly enjoyed that. But my dad was very pleased when I decided that I shouldn't make a living out of horses, like a hobby, really. And so very pleased, I think, to know that I was going to get back to the real world and what, you know, I had a degree in computer science. So, you know, I think very pleased that, you know, I was getting back to something that was, you know, more normal. Yeah. And as a result, through that journey, I had actually, you know, had met people in Towers Perrin. They were in Newbury, based in Newbury, so near where I was living at the time. Yeah. And actually joined them, really not knowing what they did. But clearly it was around the 2000 year. They wanted to get off Excel spreadsheets into models. So when you have a, you know, computer science background, that was great. So then I joined the world of Tillinghast and actuaries, as you can imagine. And it was a baptism of fire, as you can imagine. And I can still remember to this day being in a meeting with Barclays in their boardroom, and everyone will be surprised to hear that I did not say one word. Not one word.
Why don't I believe that?
Exactly, but I didn't. Okay. Because it was like they were talking in Dutch, which I don't speak. So it was just foreign, the whole language. And I guess that starts a little bit as to how I've ended up enjoying what I'm doing today, because what I realised, not just that day, but as I continued on, you know, Tillinghast actuaries, they create products that financial services take to market. So I saw that process, and I remember thinking, you know, along that journey, that the consumer has no hope. And not because they're not savvy, they don't care about their money, none of those reasons you might jump to, but because genuinely they don't have a hope. I mean, I saw the way the products were manufactured, you see the way they seed the market, you see the way the advisors are trained, and then the advisors take, you know, you see that process and you think, no way. So it probably, that's where it started, that seed of doubt is what you call it, or a niggle, and you think it's not really right, is it? that a consumer hasn't got a hope with their money. I mean, it's just not quite right. And I think that, the opportunity to MBO eValue from Towers, which happened when Towers merged with Watson Wyatt. So it was a great opportunity to take an institutional piece of kit and bring it forward to the retail market. Fantastic to try and get that risk return, kind of much more at the forefront of where it should be discussed, with the consumer again, obviously through the advisor in the retail world, fine. And then obviously, on to Moneyhub, which is really taking what I think a proper consumer-centric view and really putting the consumer at the heart of their money. Yeah. And so that's how I think, on that odd journey, I'm meant to be here.
Which is brilliant. And you're right, it's giving people that knowledge, that control over something which is fundamental. I mean, I find money boring, to be fair. It's not something I think about. But the truth is, it's a bit like oxygen. If you don't have it, you think of nothing else. And it has some, bad impacts on you, clearly, if you don't have enough. And people, the vast majority of people in the UK just don't have access. And I know that's something that you feel very passionate about, obviously, with your involvement with Moneyhub. Before we get on to Moneyhub, I mean, what I'm interested in, because this whole series is about digital transformation, specifically what it means for our industry, which in a roundabout way, I guess, is the same industry that you serve, because it's all about the consumer at the end of the day. But what does digital transformation mean to you?
Well, it means making the consumer properly centric to a business. So we talk about it. We talk about being customer centric, but talking about it and doing it, to me, are two very different things. And some companies, get it right, and I suspect they put a lot of effort in to get it right. But it's not really in the DNA, I think, of most companies, and there's probably lots of reasons for that, which we haven't probably got time to go into today. Even to do with quarterly shareholder results. There's lots of parameters as to why that isn't the case. But my belief is that if we don't put the consumer at the heart of what we do as a business, no matter what you do, you won't survive. That is just, I'm happy to be challenged on that, but it is my belief. So what I think digital transformation enables most businesses to do is to put the consumer at the heart of what they do in a way that possibly wasn't that easy to do before. And that's just goes back to data, because the more data that you have, which obviously a digital transformation enables more data to flow between the two parties, I think that's what elevates you into a position of being able to really service a customer in a way that they want to be serviced.
Okay, and that's a really interesting comment, because people talk a lot about data, but if we sort of fold that into the financial services advice world, okay, rather than the big banks, but the small financial advisors that the market we serve, small as in, you get some very big ones clearly, but the majority are relatively small businesses. What hope do they actually have of digitally transforming their business? Because the vast majority of them are still sitting on technology which was launched in the mid-90s to early noughties, and do they have the right psyche to think through the challenges of what is needed in order to help them digitally transform their business? Because I've no doubt at all the prize is massive, and we're already seeing, as I mentioned in my introduction, we're already seeing some of our clients who've embraced the whole concept of digital and deploying technology the way of engaging with the clients the way clients want to be engaged with, has enabled them to massively upscale the number of consumers they look after. But given your knowledge of our industry, where do you think we need to be, or where do we need to go in order to help with this digitalisation of our industry, our business?
I have a lot of sympathy for the advice community, to be fair, because...
You don't, do you?
No, I do. No, only because they aren't and they shouldn't be technologists, if you like. That isn't... They don't land on this world to be a technologist, or they wouldn't be doing the job they're doing. So I have a lot of sympathy because they're also hitting up against a lot of technology change and requirements in order for them to be good advisors, if you like. So I have a lot of sympathy, but the only thing I would say is that I think we've got to look at the industry probably in two parts. There is a part of the industry which I think we have to almost accept, that they will run their businesses how they want to run them until I don't mean it horribly when I say no longer, but until they want to retire or wind it up. Yeah. And actually, I personally think that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it could be right for that business or those advisors or those consumers with those advisors, together. But I think what we're talking about here a bit more is what's the future of the advice industry and how do you get from where you are today to go forward if actually that isn't your kind of mindset or your plan. And I think that's when it slightly gets more difficult, because for those businesses and those people, they're going to have to potentially step out of their comfort zone to embrace technology. And that's where you slightly hit that, but perhaps they don't want to embrace technology, but I think they either need to find people in their businesses that are willing to do that for them on their behalf. Yeah. But I think the mindset has to shift in that group, because there is only one way I see advice going, and that is, genuinely the hybrid model of people and technology, but the benefit is the scale they will get. But I only see that possible option. And even if you want to have no scale and keep yourself, contained, that's fine, but you'll still have to embrace technology. You just won't get the scale benefits in a business. And the reason for that is because the consumer expectation will be there.
In your mind, what does a digitally transformed advice business look like?
Oh, well, probably very different to what we see today. So I think we have to be prepared to take a bit of a leap, I think, because most businesses, and it's probably not just advice businesses, have got by doing what they do and survived. But I think even the environment we've been in this year has exposed some of that for what it's worth. The strings and sellotape, not gonna last. So my view is that you have to have a way of safely getting data from people to do your job. I think jokingly, I think they thought I was joking, but I wasn't. But I said jokingly, if I was to start an advice business today, you wouldn't be able to be a customer of mine unless you were willing to share all your financial data with me. Yeah. And I mean, share it, link it up, put it through my systems, because I wouldn't want to take the risk of advising you if I genuinely don't know what you're doing with your money and how you're doing it and how you're living your life. Yeah. Because to me, that's the bedrock of what informs my thinking, with my knowledge as to how I help you get from where you are today to where you want to be. But without that bedrock, I would be worried I'm giving you flawed advice.
And I think that's a really important point, because when I was a financial advisor all those years ago, what struck me was people's ambivalence towards their own money. And I although it wasn't really financial planning per se, but one of the things I was on a mission to help our clients do at that stage was to get them to understand their money and approach it on purpose. So I was getting them to complete Quicken, so they recorded their expenditure, their income, so they knew where their money was going. Because unless you do that, you just don't know. It just goes, You've got cash in at the beginning of the month and there's nothing there at the end of it. And I suppose that was quite a manual process, but people got engaged with it and they became much more self-aware. But of course, the future's changed. The technology has changed everything now, and access to information is much more, information is available. And I suppose that's the foundation of Moneyhub, isn't it, really? The open finance that you've talked a lot about. And so I guess the potential to turn the whole relationship on its head, where the consumer now doesn't have to do that because that's already there. It's then enabling the advisor to leverage that to then act on behalf of their advisor in a much more proactive way. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess the other bit about the advice community, which is slightly, with at odds to how I think, and I'm not an advisor, so that might be why. But it's a little bit representative of financial services more widely, which is the silos again. So, I'm a mortgage advisor. Yeah. It's like, well, you can't, it's yes, maybe, but in the holistic nature of the person's life. But that quite often isn't what I find, and I have to say it surprises me, because I think to myself, you think of the effort that goes into getting the mortgage customer, if you like, to advise. when I've said to them, well, why don't you stay connected to them then? So that, as and when, you can see that you might be able to actually, offer them another product, or you might want to talk to them about even just, I don't know, decreasing their mortgage payments for whatever reason, and a way that they could do that, or increasing them, for example, because you can actually help them do that. To your point, they're not interested in running their money, but you can. And that's the bit that and there is very little interest in that side of it. They're just like, yeah, but I just want to sell more mortgage advice, so that's what I do. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a shift that has to happen in the mindset as well, as not just the technology, but also thinking of the customer holistically. Yeah. But financial services doesn't do that very well more widely, so it's not just the advice community.
So Sam, you made a really good point, and it's sort of goes really to the heart of what a financial planner does, doesn't it? Because what you were describing around mortgage brokers is a transactional service per se. You're selling a mortgage, where of course in the true sense of financial planning, a mortgage, a house is an asset and a liability of a greater whole. And we're probably going to go down a rabbit hole that we don't want to go down at the moment, talking about people's attitudes towards protection, for example. And I was quite staggered to learn recently when I was talking to some people at iPipeline, and the statistics around mortgages sold with related protection. It's appalling. There was very little protection actually sold on one of the biggest financial exposures an individual has. So that's clearly something the industry has got to resolve at some stage. It's that sort of holistic approach to financial planning. But I think the key thing, and this is I suppose where digital transformation makes all the difference, is where you are in touch with what's going on, even though you're not dealing with them on a day-by-day basis, because the technology, certainly the technology that you're creating within Moneyhub, is almost providing what I called the other day, always on financial planning. Yes. I think you might have coined that phrase as well, where the system is basically looking at you and nudging you to do stuff. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of what Moneyhub actually does on behalf of clients.
Well, I think the easiest one to start with is just cash flow planning, which is pretty fundamental to a lot of businesses in terms of financial advice. And you'll appreciate with COVID that the financial plans that people did in January, February probably had to be ripped up and put in the bin as soon as they were done. And that just seems a crazy thing to have to do now as an advisor and also as the customer that you're advising. What I'd like to see and what you can do now, and this is why I'd like it to progress at speed, is because I think you could have a system now where you're 24/7 monitoring. You don't do once a year. That's gone. And what you can do is you literally have the initial service that you set up to understand the customer, what they want, their needs, and make sure you do all of that. I'm not negating any of that. But what I think would be lovely is for them to depart. And then actually what you've got is some rules of engagement in terms of my plan. Yeah. And when I'm a bit off plan, for me, who actually very, very comfortable with risk, as because of the plane and things like that, that I cope well with that type of distraction. So I might have quite good tolerance before I need someone to intervene. Yeah. But you, Roland, which is probably a bad example because you're probably quite risk appetite.
Very risk averse.
Oh, so let's say you are terribly risk averse, but you might have a much narrower tolerance on that plan. And that's fine, absolutely fine. But genuinely, all of us are walking around with our plan of kind of what I call green, amber, red. Yeah. And they're very different. But what it might mean is that I soldier on through the next year or two, absolutely bang on plan and no issue. Another customer may be in and out of trouble every quarter, for example, alerting for various reasons, and you're doing a lot. But I just think to understand that my advisor has got my back in terms of that plan, and knowing that if it goes red, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get a call. We're going to have to talk about it. It just feels very good to me. It feels very, very safe. It feels very secure, and it feels very sensible. Yeah. But we're not there yet. But that has got to be the next step. So what I call it is 24/7 planning.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a conversation with a a new entrant into the space, only yesterday actually. It was really interesting, and they had rejected the current crop of incumbents simply because when he actually analysed what that process was, what the client journey was, what the user experience was, actually it's all about client relationship management and not about back office. It's not about, reporting and all that sort of nonsense. It's about engaging and building relationships.
Well, going back to your point about putting things in the bin, it doesn't mean the things that we put in the bin are not important. So I don't think we're saying that. I think that is, so we're not dismissing that, but it is going back to this consumer-centric positioning. And I can remember when, Nationwide, with their mortgage offers, it's quite a big pack you get as a consumer. So what they decided to help, because there's this big pack to digest, and they really want to make sure you didn't put it in the bin. I remember them, coming up with a plan whereby you got your offer, and then you couldn't sign it for a certain period of time because you needed to read it. So when you got it, you couldn't just sign it and send it back. You couldn't do that. And there was I think it was something like 48 hours. I'm just going to make it up. I can't remember what it was. And then after that, you could sign it and give it back. And that was to give you that time and make sure you read it. And I thought to myself, this is what I mean about going about it the wrong ways. So all that happened was the thing sat on people's kitchen benches for 40 hours, and then they signed it. Because you've only got to look at it. And the thing I said to them is, when you can't change something at all, and then you also layer that with you don't understand half of what it is saying, why are you going to read it? Yeah. I mean, if I pick up something in that big pack and think, I think I'd like to change that. Yeah. That doesn't seem very fair. Yeah. Are you going to change it? Yeah. No. And then on top of that, when I also don't understand most of it, I mean, what? So this is the bit that I honestly struggle to get. Why are we making it so hard for the consumer? Just put your consumer hat on every step of the way. Yeah. Which, to be fair to the advisors, I think they do a lot. That's why, they're so good with customers, aren't they? And that's why they have customers. So hang on to that,
So what are their biggest challenges then? What do they need to confront, and what is the route through to this new panacea, this new digitally transformed world that we're describing?
Well, without wanting to, quote the FCA at them, which they'll all despair at, but it is about knowing your customer, isn't it? It is that simple, isn't it? Just know your customer and do that efficiently and effectively. Going back to my earlier point, there are some businesses out there that do it beautifully, without a lot of technology, with a small group, that they'll do well forever. But if you really are in a modern era, your consumers will expect technology, and so therefore move with the times and then scale your business as a result. Make it bigger and better than what it would have been held back by the old models. It's to me, it's like 1 + 1 = 2.
Fantastic. Well, look, we could keep on going forever, and let's not even begin to start talking about intergenerational wealth and all of those challenges, because that's massive. I mean, the opportunity for this industry is vast, but you're right. I think they need to focus on finding out what their clients really value and then making sure they can deliver it in spades. And I think if they're able to achieve that and to remove the complexity and give people clarity about what they're committing to and what they should be committing to, I think the future's bright.
Yeah, I do. I completely agree. And it's accessible now to do that. It's not hard. So no excuses anymore.
No excuses. Sam, thank you so much. It's so nice to see you. That was really interesting. And let's catch up again next year in 2021 and do another one of these. I think hopefully this will be well received. So thank you very much, Sam. That was brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.